there was a report that we received from a school program where the child had made statements about being thrown and beaten as a result of a negative behavior report coming home from that program. A negative behavior report had already gone home, right, from the program, and the child was acutely distressed and curled up into a ball and sobbing and repetitively making statements about the anxiety about what would happen, right, to the child, once the parent came for the child. The parent had already arrived, picked up the child, and left the program by the time the information had been reported to us. And so, despite some consternation and disagreement on the part of the agency that called in the report, I called 911, requested a police response out at the residence immediately because the specific nature of the harm the child was alleging, that choked, thrown, beaten, were such that we didn't feel like we could take the chance, of something horrible happening between that moment and, the next morning when non-emergency reports are assigned. Ultimately, and I said this to the reporter, I said, chances are, statistically speaking, the child's going to be okay. The child's upset that the child was in trouble. Chances are the child is not going to be horribly hurt. Maybe the child was never horribly hurt, and this was a reaction in a hope by the child that the information wouldn't be communicated to the parent. But we can't take that chance. At the end of the day, we're hearing this specific threat. The child is reacting in a way that indicates that it's authentic. Even if it wasn't appearing to be authentic, we would still, act in the interests of making sure that worst case scenario is not going to happen. And so police went out, interfaced with the family. The child was okay. It still was referred for assignment to a social worker for follow-up, but we had to take that initial step. And even though the program director who called me was very upset, right, that we took a step to call the police that they felt was excessive, I explained to her, I said, unfortunately, if you don't communicate the information to me, right, then the safety liability is on you. If I don't respond appropriately to these emergency circumstances to make sure somebody goes out to see and ensure that nothing terrible is happening to the child, like the child had already communicated to us, then that liability and responsibility is on me. And I need to ensure that I do what's necessary to make sure that a child is safe, even though typically the worst case scenario that's presented will not actually have manifested. We can't assume that that's the case if the risk is something horrible happening to a child.